I want to kind of go back on something you said about, making mistakes and how important that was. And I have a question about, just mistakes that you've noticed, novice bug bounty hunters make, but I want to lead that off really with how important it is to make mistakes, especially whenever you're starting off with something. Because I know, especially for me with, not only like my career, but even with my YouTube channel, there's kind of a fear with making mistakes. But I've always walked away from that just thinking like, wow, well, if I didn't make that mistake, I wouldn't have learned this lesson. So, kind of what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, exactly. The people who are successful are the people who have made a million mistakes. For every good decision that I've made 50 bad ones. And I've made bad decisions, I've made horrible decisions, and I've learned from them. Like recently, there's been some controversy because I also had an Android bug bounty course. In one of those files, in one of those PowerPoints that I created myself, I used a screenshot from a Medium article. That was wrong. I should have contacted the person. I know that. But in my opinion, should I contact everybody or not? I don't know. Like, should I contact all of my sources or should I just cite them? For me, citing is enough. Maybe for some people not. But anyway, okay, I was wrong. I admit that. And I made my mistake and I made it right again. I emailed the person from the Medium article because I sold 5 courses and I was willing to compensate him for those 5 courses. And then I made my Android course for free available. So if you guys want, the Android course is available for free on my website. Um, so you make mistakes, you learn from them, and sometimes you fall hard, but the higher you go, the harder you can fall, of course. That's also something you have to deal with, something you have to take into account. A lot of people, they don't consider that success also comes with a lot of responsibility. Because here in Belgium, we say that high trees catch a lot of wind, and I think it's very, very true. That's something you have to be very aware of. Also, if you want to be a bit of a public figure, that it comes with a lot of responsibilities, and all of the mistakes you make are going to be public. So that's when it gets even harder to admit that you are wrong. That's something very, very important. Admitting that you are wrong and opening up your mind. And it's hard. I'm not going to deny that. You probably know this as well. For me, it's really, really hard to open up my mind to ideas that are not mine because it sort of goes like against my human nature for some reason. But you have to, because other insights into a world are going to bring you so much good, and that's also what I like about the public failings. People will point it out to you and you will be able to learn from it. Whereas if you are on your own and if you're just trying things, if you're stumbling along, it's harder to notice those mistakes as well. That's something that we have to be careful about, I think.
Yeah, and I do want to say, like, on the note about your course and to your credit there, like, you acted really quickly. I was following along on Twitter. Like, I just kind of started seeing it on my timeline. And it's like, just as soon as someone pointed it out, you were on top of it, acting pretty decisively. And, I think that's a good example to set for other people, that are wanting to get out there when faced with, hey, here's an issue that we need to, grapple with. Don't delay. You just jump on it, accept responsibility and, attack it and make it right. And, I think you did really good there.
Yeah, that's very important. Accept responsibility for your mistakes. I've seen countless people, they argue when their mistakes are being pointed out, or they go into a very defensive mode. And it seems natural to be a human to do that, but try to put that aside and actually accept the fact that you've made a mistake and actually admit it as well. It's very important, not just to yourself, but to everybody. Okay, I've made a mistake. Um, But it's also important, in my opinion, that if you don't feel like you have made a mistake, that you should stick to your guns. Nobody is able to tell you what's right or what's wrong. There is no human that can decide about that. There is no deity that can decide about that for me. You do what's morally right for you. And for me, this was what's morally right. I felt bad for that person because I had used his content. So I did feel bad for him, and that's why I sent the mail, and that's why I opened up the course as well. And that's what you should always be following, your moral compass. It's very important to follow your instincts in bug bounties, in security, in pen testing, in anything, you know, and just accept responsibility as well.
Have you ever, encountered when presenting your findings after a bug bounty, um, and you encounter resistance to your findings that maybe, whoever you're presenting to is not necessarily, or is saying that it's not necessarily their problem, or that you might be wrong whenever very clearly, as you have the evidence to back it up, you are correct. That something can be broken in a certain way.
Yeah. Are you talking about like bug bounties and
Mhm.
triagers?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have had that happen before. It's difficult. It's very difficult because it's sort of up to the point of a triager as well, in my opinion. And some triagers will allow some stuff that I think like, how the heck did this ever get to triage? And it's also very confusing because a lot of my students come to me and they say, yeah, but look at this. There is a activity report of it. Yeah, but it's so, first of all, company dependent. Second of all, triage dependent. I've had a JWT token that I was able to forge on a website. And of course, I reported it. It got denied because they weren't able to find any impact from it, which was messed up because I had a video recording. The triager did things wrong constantly. He recorded his actions. It was very clear that he was doing things wrong. And it was very frustrating for me, but you have to keep calm and just explain your point of view, and just go on with the issue. If you are calm and if you are respectable for everybody, you know, you have to put yourself in the triager's position as well. They get maybe $2,000 to review every single day. And if it's not immediately apparent, and maybe they are not as technical as you as well, maybe they are just somebody who has been hired, because a triager doesn't have to be as technical as somebody like us. Like if we find a super complex vulnerability, it might be hard to explain as well. So I just kept explaining. I kept calm and respectfully and towards him. I had to open a new vulnerability. It was fixed by the time I had to open that new bug. There was no more testing. I could no longer report it. I was pretty angry. I asked for remediation from HackerOne, but nothing ever came of it. So I just left it for what it is. I'm not going to waste my time that I could be hunting on something that's clearly not going to happen. I know it was because it was an account takeover, it was quite a high price. Of course, it was $4,000 or something. But I'm not gonna lay awake over money. Money is the least of my worries. If I am hunting, I am actually trying to learn. That is what I'm trying to do. And if I do find a vulnerability on top of that, that is good, but it is not my first priority at all. That's
You
why I
sound like
also,
a wolf. Like, as long as I'm hunting, it's all okay. That's cool. Um, and your first video to kind of tie this into your YouTube channel, you posted in March 12th of 2020, which it's, what day is it today? March 6th. So we're 6 days. Yeah, 6 days quick maths, right? We're 6 days away from your 1 year anniversary. So congratulations on that, man. But you
Thank you, my
talked
friend.
about picking a bug bounty program. And so for, people that are watching this and are interested in becoming a bug bounty hunter and are kind of looking for kind of their first program to dive into, what are some traits that they can look for?
Yeah, that's a very good question and very important as well, because picking your target is 90% of the work. It's going to be very, very hard. It depends on what type of a hunter you are, of course. If you're the very technical type of hunter, then you can go for very wide scope targets, go for things like Red Bull on Integrity. That's star.redbull.com or .store, I believe that they have, which is like a very big scope, and then you can let your automation skills run wild. But you can also go very functionally. What I prefer to give, if you don't mind, is things to avoid in programs as a beginner. I think that might be a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, as a beginner, you often see, and this is a big trap, you often see recon videos on YouTube. When you search for bug bounties, you're going to look at recon videos, and that is okay. But as a beginner, I would try to focus more on main apps, things like the newspaper I talked about maybe. But the newspaper is a bad one because newspapers have very limited functionality. So that's one to avoid. Avoid things with very limited functionality. You should also avoid web shops, in my opinion, because for a web shop, you're going to need to do investments. You're going to need to buy things because you also want to test that process. You're going to need to return the item. You're going to need to add some complexity to your testing. And in the beginning, you want to keep it as simple as possible. So always go for requests that have very clear to read requests. If your target has very obfuscated requests, for example, sometimes the request can be encrypted as well. And I would definitely not recommend those as a beginner. If your target has any difficulty in deciphering the requests, I would avoid it. If your target has if your target doesn't give you any account, like static website, like for example, the website of your city hall might just be a static website. It doesn't give you any accounts, no details. Avoid it. It's not going to be worth your time. There's no functionality to test there. I prefer it if the website lets me create my own accounts, and I actually prefer it even more if they let me create accounts of different privilege levels. So those are some good things that you can look for. And one last thing that you should really, really always avoid is if your target is talking about this huge out of scope list with very basic things out of scope, like, yeah, we know cross-site scripting is out of scope. We know CSRF is out of scope. We know this is out of scope. Yeah, avoid that. Run like it's the plague, you know. That's going to be hard to get. And one thing you should always avoid is very big payouts. If it says $15,000 as a payout, you might want to wait till later. It's probably very secure.
Yeah, got you. Those are awesome. Those are awesome points. I have a few more questions on that, but we're coming close to time. So I want to be sure to ask a couple, not necessarily cybersecurity questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
One would be about, what got you into creating a YouTube channel?
That's a really interesting question. I told you about those friends that I had a group with when we did OSCP. They asked me a lot of questions because I was one of the first to get OSCP in there. Some other people had it as well. And I love explaining stuff, so I explained it to them every time. But I noticed some questions kept coming back, and that's when I decided to make a little bit of videos. It started out with bug bounties because I did some bug bounties. I got some bugs by then. and they started asking me, hey, well, how do you pick a platform, or like, what's cross-site scripting? How do I test for it actually? So that's when I started making those videos, and other people started watching, and it kind of exploded from there. When I got into the top 20 at Integrity, I used it to make some advertisement for myself on Reddit as well. Like, hey guys, I'm a top 20 hacker on Integrity, come watch my videos. So that all helped, of course, and collaboration with other content creators like you, that's one of the best things to do to get a bigger audience, you know. So thanks for the
Awesome.
question.
I have a buddy who we were talking about whenever I was like just starting I think it was my current job. He was like, yeah, if you find yourself doing something more than twice, automate it. And it's like YouTube is like you're automating describing things, you know? And so it's like, you know, if someone asks a question, you just send them a link to the video and be like, hey, here's your answer, don't worry. Kind of
I've done
funny.
it so often since I've become the XSSRat. I've been sending video after video after video. Hey,
That's
does this
funny.
help?
That's funny. So, and then another, you know, quick question. So, as you know, COVID kind of starts to come to an hopefully, hopefully this year, please. I just, man, but you know, and people start traveling again. You know, what are some cool things people can do out in Belgium that maybe you wouldn't necessarily find on like Google or like some of the major like travel boards?
That's a really cool question as well. For me, I love theme parks. I really love theme parks. Of course, those are going to be on the major platforms. You're going to find them. But the zoos are going to be a little bit less described, and we have one close to here called Powaki Zoo. It's a pretty small zoo, you'd say, but it has a gigantic area to walk in, and giant like bird cages, and you can walk around with the monkeys and all that stuff. So really cool stuff there. And also not here in Belgium, but like 5 minutes away from me in the Netherlands. I live really close to the border. There is a game hall. We also have those in Belgium, by the way, where you can play like this old arcade games that they used to play. That stuff hasn't been in Belgium for a while, but it's coming back. So I'm really glad for that. And there's also Center Parks, of course, which is like a park where you can rent a cottage, and it's connected to a subtropical swimming paradise, basically. So really
Whoa.
interesting stuff to do.
You know, my brother and my wife and I, we all studied abroad, but like in different places. I went to China. My brother went to Paris, and my wife went to Spain and then Greece. But so I haven't been to Europe, but I'd love to go. So and you know, my brother has only made I don't think he made it to Amsterdam, but he loved it. I mean, close-ish, you know. And I'd love to go out and just kind of travel around too. So. That's cool.
I've taught performance testing in Amsterdam to, I think it was the Dutch government even. I taught a
Wow.
5-day course there, an expert course in performance testing.
How was that? That must have been pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I loved it. My work paid for it, all expenses paid, the hotel paid. I could eat wherever I want. Even my wife could come along because she had a holiday back then, and they had to pay the room for 2 people anyway. So my wife could just come along, you know. Really cool trip. And the
That's
Dutch people, really cool people. They wanted to come in at 10 a.m. and they wanted to quit at 3 p.m.
can we please in America do that? That'd be so cool. And like I'm the one to complain, right? I work from home. Like what? That's like peak laziness on my part. But I don't know. That's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love doing that. I love teaching. That's why I also started courses, of course.
Cool. Well, dude, this has been an absolute blast, man. I mean, just a billion more questions, but maybe, you know, another time we can, you know, continue to go through this, man. Dude, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your time, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Hey, be sure to thank TheXSSRat by following him on YouTube and on Twitter. He's an awesome dude. I really appreciate his time on this channel, imparting his wisdom, and he's an excellent bug bounty hunter. Just to know, if you want to be the best, you got to learn from the best. And hey, this is one of the best, so definitely do check out his content, especially if you're wanting to get into bug bounties. You'll be in good shape. So with that, like, comment, subscribe. See ya.